Clara Thornton pressed her face against the wooden floor of the stagecoach and screamed. Not from the gunfire outside, not from the shouting men, but from the moment her own uncle looked her straight in the eyes and said, "I'm sorry, Clara. I can't carry you." Then he turned his back and walked away, leaving her alone with a broken leg, a torn wedding dress, and the summer rain beginning to fall. The bandits had taken everything, but it was her own blood who abandoned her to die. Before we continue Clara's heartbreaking journey, I want to invite you to subscribe to our channel and follow her story until the very end. And please comment below with the city you're watching from. I'd love to see just how far Clara's story has traveled across this beautiful country of ours. Now let's return to the plains of Colorado, summer of 1876, where a broken bride was about to meet the man who would change everything. The stagecoach had stopped moving 3 hours ago. Clara Thornton knew this because she had counted every minute, every second, lying on that wooden floor with her splinted leg throbbing like a second heartbeat. The summer heat pressed down through the canvas top, thick and suffocating. But she didn't dare move to the window. What if they came back? Her wedding dress, the one her mother had worn 28 years ago, was now torn at the hem and stained with dust. Clara stared at the fabric pooling around her legs and felt nothing. Not sadness, not anger, just a hollow emptiness that seemed to grow with each passing moment. "You'll be fine," Uncle Henry had said before he left. "Someone will come along. Someone will come along." As if she were a lost parcel waiting to be collected. Clara pushed herself up on her elbows, gritting her teeth against the pain that shot through her left leg. The break had happened 4 days ago, a stupid accident on her father's porch in Missouri. She'd been carrying her trunk downstairs, eager to begin her journey west to marry Thomas Whitmore, a merchant in Silverton who had promised her a good life. A good life. She almost laughed at that now. "You're making a mistake," her father had warned her. "You don't know this man." "I know enough," Clara had replied. "I know he wants me. That's more than anyone here can say." At 25, Clara Thornton was considered a spinster in her small Missouri town. Too old, too plain, too opinionated. The whispers had followed her for years. That one thinks she's too good for farming folk. Who does she think she is reading all them books? Thomas Whitmore's advertisement in the matrimonial newspaper had seemed like an answer to prayer. A respectable merchant seeking a bride of good character, someone who valued intelligence and conversation. His letters had been kind, thoughtful. Nothing like the rough farmhands who looked at her like she was a mare to be broken. But none of that mattered now. Clara was alone on the Colorado plains with a broken leg, no horse, no water, and the summer sun beginning its slow descent toward the horizon. She heard the sound before she saw anything. Hoofbeats, steady and purposeful. Clara's heart seized in her chest. The bandits. They'd come back to finish what they started. She looked around frantically for something, anything to defend herself with. Her fingers closed around a small leather satchel containing her few remaining possessions. Useless, completely useless. The hoofbeats grew closer. Clara pressed herself against the far wall of the stagecoach, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. If they wanted to kill her, she wouldn't make it easy. She'd scratch, she'd bite, she'd fight until her last breath. The sound stopped. Silence. Then a voice. Deep, male, cautious. "Hello, anyone in there?" Clara didn't answer. It could be a trick. The bandits could have sent someone to check if she was worth robbing again. "I can see the coach from here," the voice continued. "Looks abandoned, but I thought I saw movement." Still, Clara remained silent. She heard boots hit the ground, footsteps approaching slowly, deliberately, the crunch of dry grass beneath heavy soles. A shadow fell across the doorway. And then he appeared. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dusty range coat that had seen better days. His hat was pulled low over his face, but she could see a strong jaw, a few days' worth of stubble, and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Those eyes landed on her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "You hurt?" he asked finally. His voice was neutral, not warm, but not threatening either. Clara found her voice. Who are you? Name's Samuel Garrett. Folks call me Sam. He didn't move from the doorway. You gonna answer my question, ma'am? You hurt. My leg is broken. His gaze dropped to her splinted limb, then back to her face. The people who did this to the coach, they do that to you too. No, I broke it before, back in Missouri. And they just left you here with a broken leg. The question hung in the air between them. Clara felt her throat tighten. Yes. Sam removed his hat and ran a hand through his dark hair. She could see his face clearly now, weathered skin lines around his eyes that spoke of too much sun and too little sleep. A scar above his left eyebrow pale against his tanned skin. That's about the coldest thing I've heard in a while, he said quietly. And I've heard plenty of cold things. My uncle said he'd send help. From where? The nearest town. He said it was about 15 miles east. Sam let out a low whistle. 15 miles on foot in this heat. That's a full day's walk, maybe more. And that's if they don't get lost or run into trouble. He glanced at the sky. Sun's going down in a few hours. Even if they made it and sent someone back right away, you're looking at tomorrow afternoon at the earliest. Clara had already done this math in her head. She knew her chances. I have water, she said. A small canteen. It should last. Should. Sam put his hat back on. Look, ma'am, I ain't in the habit of leaving folks stranded, but I also ain't in the habit of inviting strangers into my camp. You understand? I'm not asking you to. No, you ain't. He studied her for another long moment. What's your name? Clara. Clara Thornton. Well, Miss Thornton, here's how I see it. You can stay here and hope your uncle's help arrives before the coyotes get curious. Or you can come with me to my camp about 2 miles back. It ain't much, but there's water, food, and shelter. Clara's hands tightened on her satchel. I don't know you. No, you don't, and I don't know you. But I do know that a woman alone on these plains at night with a broken leg is asking for trouble. He paused. I ain't gonna hurt you, Miss Thornton, but I understand if you don't believe that. Your choice. He turned and started walking back toward his horse. Clara watched him go. Every lesson she'd ever learned about propriety, about trusting strangers, about protecting her reputation, screamed at her to stay in the coach. Wait for proper help. Don't go anywhere with a man she'd just met. But another part of her, the practical part that had kept her alive through a childhood of poverty and a womanhood of disappointment, knew the truth. If she stayed here, she would die. Wait. Sam stopped, but didn't turn around. I'll come with you. He turned, then his expression unreadable. You sure about that? No, Clara admitted. But I'm sure about what happens if I stay. Something flickered in his eyes. Respect maybe, or understanding. All right then. He walked back to the coach and extended his hand. Let's get you out of there. The process of extracting Clara from the stagecoach was neither graceful nor painless. Every movement sent fresh waves of agony through her broken leg, and despite her best efforts, she cried out more than once. Sam said nothing throughout his hands, steady and careful, as he maneuvered her through the narrow doorway. When he finally lifted her into his arms to carry her to his horse, Clara was breathing hard and fighting back tears. Sorry, she managed. I'm trying not to. Don't apologize for hurting. Sam interrupted. Ain't nothing weak about feeling pain. He set her sideways on his horse, a sturdy chestnut mare with calm eyes, then mounted behind her. His arms came around her to grip the reins, and Clara was suddenly very aware of how close they were. The solid warmth of his chest against her back, the smell of leather and sage, and something uniquely masculine. She forced herself to focus on the horizon. Hold tight, Sam said. I'll go slow as I can, but it's gonna hurt some. I know. They rode in silence for a while. The prairie stretched out around them, endless waves of golden grass beneath a sky beginning to blush with sunset. Clara tried to distract herself from the pain by counting the colors pink, orange, gold, purple, but her mind kept circling back to the same questions. Who was this man? Why was he helping her? And what was she supposed to do when they reached his camp? "You said you were heading to Silverton," Sam said suddenly. "That's a long way from Missouri." "I was going to be married." "Was?" Clara hesitated. "I suppose I still am, if I ever get there." "Who's the lucky man?" "A merchant. Thomas Whitmore. We've been corresponding for 2 years." Corresponding. Sam's voice was neutral. "So you've never met him?" "No." "That's a mighty big leap of faith, Miss Thornton. Traveling all this way to marry a man you've never seen." Clara felt her defenses rise. "Not everyone has the luxury of marrying for love, Mr. Garrett. Some of us have to make practical choices." "Didn't say nothing about love." Sam guided the horse around a patch of rough ground. "Just seems like a lot to risk on some letters." His letters were kind. He seemed suitable. Suitable. The word hung between them like a judgment. Clara twisted slightly to look at him. "You disapprove." "Ain't my place to approve or disapprove. Your life, your choice." "But—" Sam met her eyes briefly before returning his attention to the path ahead. "But I've seen a lot of folks come west chasing something. Gold, land, a fresh start. Most of them don't find what they're looking for." "And what about you, Mr. Garrett? What are you chasing?" The question seemed to catch him off guard. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I ain't chasing nothing, Miss Thornton. I'm just trying to be left alone." Something in his voice told her not to push further. They rode the rest of the way in silence. Sam's camp was simple but well organized. A small canvas tent, a fire pit with the remains of the morning's coals and supplies neatly arranged under a tarp. He dismounted first, then lifted Clara down with the same careful efficiency he'd shown before. "I'll set you by the fire pit," he said. "Ground's softer there. Then I'll get a fire going." Clara nodded, too exhausted to argue. As Sam worked on building the fire, Clara studied him. The way he moved, economic and precise. No wasted energy. No unnecessary gestures. Everything about him suggested a man who had learned to survive by being efficient. "How long have you been out here?" she asked. "On the plains, I mean." "Few years." Sam fed kindling to the growing flames. "I scout for wagon trains mostly. Survey routes for the railroad companies." "That sounds lonely." He glanced at her. "Suits me." The fire crackled to life, casting dancing shadows across Sam's weathered face. He added larger branches, then sat back on his heels. "I need to look at that leg," he said. "The splint whoever put on it, it ain't right. The bone won't heal proper." Clara's stomach dropped. "What do you mean it's not right?" "I mean it's poorly set. I've seen enough injuries to know." He paused. "I can fix it, but it's gonna hurt. A lot." "Are you a doctor?" "No, ma'am, but I spent 4 years in the cavalry during the war. Learned a thing or two about field medicine when there weren't no doctor around." Clara looked at her leg, then back at Sam. "If you don't fix it, what happens?" "Best case, you walk with a limp the rest of your life. Worst case—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. "Do it." Sam nodded, then retrieved supplies from his saddlebags. Clean bandages, straight branches, a small bottle of amber liquid. "Whiskey," he explained, offering it to her. "For the pain. Take a good swig." Clara had never drunk whiskey in her life. She took the bottle and swallowed before she could think too much about it. The liquid burned a path down her throat and she coughed, tears springing to her eyes. "Easy," Sam said almost gently. "Ain't meant to be enjoyed." He positioned himself beside her leg and carefully began unwrapping the crude splint. His hands, large and calloused, were surprisingly gentle. "I'm gonna count to 3, he said. "On 3, I need you to hold still as you can. You understand?" Clara nodded, gripping the edge of the bedroll beneath her. 1. She braced herself. 2. She closed her eyes. 3. The pain was blinding. Clara screamed, her back arching as Sam manipulated the bone into proper position. White-hot agony shot through her entire body, and for a moment she thought she might pass out. Almost done. Sam's voice reached her through the haze. You're doing good, Miss Thornton. Real good. When he finally secured the new splint, Clara was shaking, tears streaming down her face. But the relief that followed the sense that something fundamentally wrong had been made right was almost worth the pain. Here. Sam pressed a cup of water into her trembling hands. Drink. She obeyed, gulping down the cool liquid. You're tougher than you look, Sam observed, watching her. Most men would have passed out from that. I'm not most men, Clara said weakly. A ghost of a smile touched Sam's lips. No, ma'am, you ain't. He helped her sit up properly, arranging blankets around her with an efficiency that suggested this wasn't the first time he'd tended to someone's injuries. You should rest, he said. I'll keep watch tonight. Mr. Garrett? Clara caught his arm as he started to rise. Why are you helping me? Sam looked down at her hand on his sleeve, then at her face. For a long moment, he didn't answer. Because someone should, he said finally. And there ain't nobody else around. He pulled his arm free and walked to the edge of camp, his back to her. Clara watched him go, questions swirling in her mind. This man, this stranger with the gentle hands and the guarded eyes, had appeared out of nowhere and quite possibly saved her life. But there was something about him, something dark and heavy, that he carried like a physical weight. What had happened to Samuel Garrett to make him seek solitude on the endless plains? And why did part of her, despite everything, want to find out? As the fire crackled and the stars began to appear overhead, Clara found herself thinking not of Thomas Whitmore and the suitable life waiting for her in Silverton, but of the lonely cowboy who had carried her from danger without asking for anything in return. Tomorrow she would send word to her fiancé. Tomorrow she would make plans to continue her journey. But tonight, here in Sam Garrett's camp, with the pain in her leg fading to a dull ache, and the warmth of the fire on her face, Clara Thornton was simply grateful to be alive. And somewhere in the darkness beyond the firelight, Sam stood watching over her, a man haunted by ghosts she couldn't yet see. Clara woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of a man's voice, low and urgent, cutting through the gray light of dawn. No. No, don't. She pushed herself up on her elbows, wincing at the stiffness in her body. Across the dying embers of the fire, Sam sat with his back against his saddle, his head jerking from side to side. His hands gripped an invisible rifle, fingers twitching against nothing. I didn't know, he muttered. I swear I didn't know, Mr. Garrett. He didn't respond. Sam. His eyes flew open, wild and unfocused. For one terrible moment, Clara saw something in them that made her blood run cold. Not anger, not fear. Something worse. Guilt. Then recognition flooded his face, and the haunted look vanished behind a wall of composure so quickly she almost wondered if she'd imagined it. Miss Thornton. His voice was rough with sleep. You shouldn't be sitting up like that. You were having a nightmare. Sam rose abruptly, turning away from her to busy himself with the coffee pot. I'm fine. You were talking in your sleep. I said I'm fine. The sharpness in his voice silenced her. Clara watched him work, noting the tension in his shoulders, the deliberate steadiness of his hands. Whatever demons haunted Samuel Garrett, he had no intention of sharing them with her. Coffee? He asked without turning around. Yes, thank you. He brought her a tin cup, then retreated to his previous position on the other side of the fire. The distance between them felt intentional. How's the leg? He asked. Better. The pain isn't as sharp. Good. We should reach Riverbend by midday if we leave soon. There's a doctor there. A real one. Clara nodded, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. And then what? Then you send word to your fiancé, recover, and continue on your way. Sam's tone was matter-of-fact, businesslike. I'll make sure you get there safe. And you? What about me? What will you do after you deliver me to Riverbend? Sam shrugged. Same as always. Keep moving. Clara wanted to ask more. About the nightmare, about the guilt she'd glimpsed in his eyes, about why a man who clearly craved solitude would go out of his way to help a stranger. But something in his closed-off posture warned her that pushing would get her nowhere. They broke camp in silence, Sam moving with that same efficient economy she'd noticed the night before. When it came time to mount the horse, he lifted her without comment, settling her in front of him the same way he had before. But something had shifted between them. The easy silence of the previous evening had been replaced by something heavier, more guarded. They'd been riding for about an hour when Clara finally spoke. You don't have to tell me what you were dreaming about. Sam's arms tensed around her. Good. But I want you to know that I understand nightmares. I have them too. He didn't respond, but she felt his grip on the reins relax slightly. Mine are always about drowning. Clara continued, not sure why she was telling him this. I nearly drowned when I was 7. Fell through the ice on the pond behind our house. My father pulled me out, but I remember the cold, the darkness, the feeling of the water pressing in from all sides. She paused. Sometimes I still wake up gasping for air. For a long moment, Sam said nothing. Then so quietly she almost missed it. Mine are about fire. Clara waited, but he didn't elaborate. They rode on. The settlement of Riverbend appeared around midday, just as Sam had predicted. It wasn't much to look at: a scattering of wooden buildings along a dusty main street. A church with a modest steeple, a general store, a saloon. But to Clara, it looked like salvation. There's a boarding house at the end of the street, Sam said. Run by a widow named Martha Henson. She's good people. She'll look after you. You know her? Passed through here a few times. She keeps a clean establishment and minds her own business. Clara noticed he didn't say whether Mrs. Henson knew him well. She filed that observation away for later. Sam helped her down from the horse in front of a 2-story house with white curtains in the windows and a well-tended garden. Before Clara could gather herself, the front door swung open and a woman emerged. She was perhaps 55, with steel gray hair pulled back in a practical bun and sharp brown eyes that missed nothing. Her apron was flour-dusted, suggesting she'd been interrupted mid-baking. Samuel Garrett, she said, her tone carrying equal parts surprise and pleasure. Haven't seen you in these parts for near on a year. Mrs. Henson. Sam tipped his hat. This here's Miss Clara Thornton. She needs a room and a doctor. Martha's gaze swept over Clara, taking in the torn dress, the splinted leg, the exhaustion written across her face. Then her eyes moved to Sam, and something unspoken passed between them. Stagecoach was robbed, Sam explained briefly. Left her behind because of the leg. Found her yesterday about 20 miles west. Lord have mercy. Martha descended the porch steps and approached Clara with gentle hands. You poor dear. Let's get you inside and cleaned up. Dr. Adams is just down the street. I'll send word. I can pay, Clara said quickly. I have some money left. The bandits didn't find it. Martha waved a dismissive hand. We'll sort all that out later. Right now you need rest food and proper medical attention. She looked at Sam. You staying? No, ma'am. I've got business elsewhere. Something flickered across Clara's face. Disappointment perhaps, or fear, but she quickly masked it. Of course. You've done more than enough, Mr. Garrett. I'm grateful. Sam hesitated. Clara could see him wrestling with something, some internal debate playing out behind his guarded expression. I'll check back in a few days, he said finally. Make sure you're settling in all right. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. He met her eyes directly, and for just a moment the wall around him seemed to crack. But I will. Then he mounted his horse, tipped his hat to both women, and rode away without looking back. Martha watched him go with an expression Clara couldn't quite read. "That man," Martha said softly, almost to herself. "Still running from whatever it is that haunts him." Clara wanted to ask what she meant, but Martha was already guiding her toward the house, calling out to someone inside about hot water and clean bandages. The next several hours passed in a blur. Dr. Adams arrived, a silver-haired man with kind eyes and capable hands, and examined Clara's leg with professional thoroughness. "Your friend did good work," he pronounced, rewrapping the splint. "The bone is set properly. With rest and care you'll make a full recovery. 4 weeks, maybe 5, before you should attempt any significant travel." 4 weeks, Clara repeated, her heart sinking. Thomas was expecting her in Silverton. She needed to send word, explain the delay. "Is there someone I should notify?" Dr. Adams asked, noting her expression. "Family? A fiancé, perhaps?" "Yes, my fiancé, Thomas Whitmore in Silverton. And my uncle, he was on the stagecoach with me. He made it to the next town." "I'll arrange for telegrams to be sent," Martha offered. "You just rest." After the doctor left, Martha helped Clara change into a clean nightgown and settle into a small but comfortable room on the first floor. The bed was soft, the sheets smelled of lavender, and for the first time in days, Clara felt something like hope. "Mrs. Henson," she said as Martha turned to leave. "Martha, please. No one calls me Mrs. Henson except the bank manager." "Martha," Clara hesitated. "How do you know Mr. Garrett?" Martha paused in the doorway. "Sam's passed through Riverbend a few times over the years. Keeps to himself mostly. Never stays long." She studied Clara with those sharp, observant eyes. "Why do you ask?" "He seems troubled." "That he is." Martha's voice softened. "But he's a good man underneath all that pain. Whatever sins he thinks he's carrying, he's paid for them 10 times over in guilt." "Sins?" Martha shook her head. "That's his story to tell, not mine. Now get some rest. Dinner's at 6, but I'll bring you a tray if you're not up to joining us at the table." After Martha left, Clara lay staring at the ceiling, her mind churning. She thought about Thomas waiting for her in Silverton. She thought about her uncle, probably worried sick. She thought about the home she'd left behind in Missouri, the whispers and pitying looks that had driven her to answer a stranger's advertisement in the first place. But mostly, she thought about Sam. Whatever sins he thinks he's carrying. What had he done? And why did part of her want to know, not out of idle curiosity, but out of something deeper? She fell asleep with these questions circling in her mind. The dreams came as they always did. But this time, instead of drowning, Clara dreamed of fire. 3 days passed in Riverbend. Clara's leg improved steadily, the pain fading from sharp to dull to merely uncomfortable. Martha proved to be an excellent caretaker, firm, but kind, practical, but warm. She brought Clara meals, helped her bathe, and kept up a steady stream of conversation that helped pass the long hours of enforced rest. The telegrams had been sent. Thomas replied with a brief message expressing concern and assuring her that their wedding could wait until she was fully recovered. The words were proper, appropriate, exactly what a concerned fiancé should say. So why did Clara feel nothing when she read them? Her uncle's response was warmer. He had made it safely to Denver and was planning to come escort her to Silverton once she was healed. "Stay safe," he wrote. "I'm sorry I left you. It will haunt me forever." Clara folded the telegram and tucked it into her satchel. She didn't blame her uncle, not really. He'd had a gun to his head. What else could he have done? But some small, bitter part of her whispered, he could have fought. He could have refused to leave. He could have chosen you. On the 4th morning, Martha appeared in Clara's doorway with an expression that made her stomach clench. "There's a man in town," Martha said without preamble. "Arrived last night. Been asking questions at the saloon." Clara's blood turned to ice. "What kind of questions?" "Looking for a woman. Says she's his wife." Says she ran off without warning and he's worried about her safety. Martha's eyes were sharp, assessing. The woman he described has brown hair, gray eyes, and a scar on her left hand from a childhood accident. Clara's right hand moved instinctively to cover her left, where a thin white line crossed her palm. Miss Thornton. Martha's voice was gentle but firm. Is there something you want to tell me? Clara opened her mouth to deny it, to claim it was coincidence, to insist she didn't know what Martha was talking about. But the lie wouldn't come. He's not my husband, she whispered. Then who is he? My brother-in-law. Clara's voice shook. My husband died 2 years ago. Edmund? That's his brother wants to marry me. To keep the family property in the family, he says. I refused, so I left. And he followed you. He must have. I thought... Clara's voice broke. I thought I was careful. I took different stagecoaches, used my maiden name. I thought I'd lost him. Martha sat down heavily in the chair beside Clara's bed. Lord child, why didn't you say something? Because you might have turned me away. Because you might have believed him. Clara looked up, tears threatening to spill. He's very convincing, Martha. He knows how to make himself seem like the worried, devoted husband. No one ever believes the woman. I believe you. The simple declaration, spoken without hesitation, broke something inside Clara. The tears she'd been holding back for months finally fell. Martha moved to sit beside her on the bed, wrapping an arm around her shaking shoulders. Hush now. It's all right. You're safe here. I'm not. Clara wiped her eyes fiercely. If he finds me, he won't. Not if I have anything to say about it. Martha's voice was steel. I've dealt with men like your Edmund before. They don't frighten me. You don't understand. He's powerful, connected. He has money and influence. If he decides to claim me as his wife, you're not his wife. No, but who will believe me? I'm a woman alone running across the country. He's a respectable businessman from Virginia. In any court of law, his word will carry more weight than mine. Martha was quiet for a long moment. Then, Sam will be back soon. Sam? Clara blinked at the sudden change of subject. What does Sam have to do with this? That man has spent years wandering these plains, avoiding his own demons. But there's one thing I know for certain about Samuel Garrett. Martha met Clara's eyes directly. He protects the people he cares about. And whether he admits it or not, he cares about you. He barely knows me. Sometimes that's enough. Martha stood smoothing her apron. Now, you stay in this room and keep quiet. I'm going to find out more about this brother-in-law of yours. She was gone before Clara could protest. The hours that followed were the longest of Clara's life. She sat by the window watching the street below, jumping at every footstep, every raised voice, every shadow that passed. The fear she'd been running from for months had finally caught up with her, and there was nowhere left to hide. Edmund Thornton was here, in this town, looking for her. Clara thought about the last time she'd seen him standing in the parlor of the house that had been her home, telling her with cold certainty that she would marry him whether she wanted to or not. It's what William would have wanted, he'd said, invoking her dead husband's name like a weapon. The property, the business, it all goes to you as his widow. But if you marry me, it stays in the family, where it belongs. I don't want to marry you, Edmund. What you want doesn't matter. His smile had been thin and cruel. You're a woman alone, Clara. No children, no family, no prospects. Society has certain expectations. You can either fulfill them with dignity, or I can make things difficult for you. That night, Clara had packed a single bag and slipped out the back door. She'd been running ever since, and now her running had led her here, to a small town in Colorado with a broken leg and no way to escape. The door burst open. Clara's heart nearly stopped. She grabbed the candlestick from the bedside table, ready to fight. But it wasn't Edmund who stood in the doorway. It was Sam. He took in her terrified expression, the makeshift weapon in her hand, and his own face hardened into something dangerous. Martha told me, he said. "About the man looking for you." Clara lowered the candlestick, her hands shaking. "You came back." "I said I would." Sam stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. "Tell me about him. This Edmund. He's my dead husband's brother. He wants to marry me to keep control of the family property." "And you don't want to marry him?" "No. God, no." Clara's voice cracked. "He's cold, Sam. Calculating. He doesn't want me, he wants what I represent. A fortune. A respectable widow to give him legitimate heirs." She shuddered. "If he forces me to go back with him?" "He won't." The certainty in Sam's voice made her look up. "You don't know that." "I know I won't let it happen." Sam moved closer, and Clara saw something in his eyes she hadn't seen before. Not just determination, but fury. Cold, controlled, and absolutely resolute. "I've spent the last 4 years running from my own mistakes, Miss Thornton, hiding from what I did, from who I was. But I'll be damned if I stand by and watch another woman be dragged back to a life she didn't choose." Another woman. Sam's jaw tightened. "That's a story for another time. Right now we need to figure out what to do about Edmund. What can we do? I can't travel with my leg like this. And even if I could, where would I go?" "You could stay here. In Riverbend." "Why not?" Sam spread his hands. "It's a small town. People look out for each other. And Edmund can claim whatever he wants, but he has no legal right to drag you anywhere. You're not his wife and you never were. The law isn't always about what's right, Sam. You know that." Something flickered in his eyes. Pain, maybe. Or recognition. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I know that better than most." A knock at the door made them both tense. But it was only Martha, her face grim. "He's coming," she said. "The man from Virginia. He asked at the general store about a woman fitting your description. Someone told him about a new arrival at my boarding house." Clara felt the blood drain from her face. "How long do I have?" "Not long. An hour, maybe less." Sam was already moving. "Is there a back way out of this house?" "Through the kitchen, but—" "Get her dressed. I'll bring the horse around." Sam was out the door before either woman could respond. Martha helped Clara into her day dress with trembling but efficient hands. "Can you walk at all?" "A little, with support." Clara gritted her teeth against the pain as she put weight on her injured leg. "Enough to get to a horse at least." "Good girl." Martha pressed something into her hand, a small Derringer pistol. "You know how to use one of these?" "My father taught me." "Then use it if you have to. Don't hesitate. Don't warn. Just shoot." Clara stared at the older woman, seeing her clearly for the first time. "You've done this before. Helped women like me." Martha's smile was sad. "Let's just say I know what it's like to run from a man who thinks he owns you. Now go. Sam's waiting." Clara made it to the back door just as hoofbeats sounded from the front of the house. Through the kitchen window, she could see a well-dressed man dismounting from a black horse. Edmund. Even from this distance she recognized him. The carefully groomed dark hair, the expensive coat, the way he held himself, like a man who had never been denied anything in his life. "Clara." She froze. He'd seen her. Through the window their eyes met, and Edmund's face split into a smile that made her skin crawl. "There you are, darling," he called, his voice carrying easily across the yard. "I've been so worried about you." "Go." Martha appeared behind her, pushing her toward the back door. "Go now." Clara ran. It was the most painful thing she'd ever done. Every step sent agony shooting through her leg, and she stumbled twice before she even made it off the porch. But Sam was there, appearing from around the corner of the house, his horse already saddled and ready. "Come on." He grabbed her around the waist and lifted her onto the saddle in one fluid motion, then swung up behind her. "Hold tight." "He saw me." "I know. We'll deal with that later." They rode. Behind them, Clara heard Edmund shouting, heard the commotion as he ran through Martha's house. But Sam's horse was fast, and within minutes they had left Riverbend behind, disappearing into the rolling hills to the north. Clara clung to Sam's arm, her heart pounding her legs, screaming in protest. But beneath the fear and the pain, she felt something else. Relief. She wasn't alone anymore. They rode for what felt like hours before Sam finally slowed the horse to a walk. The sun was beginning its descent, casting long shadows across the prairie. "There's a line cabin about a mile ahead," Sam said. "We can shelter there for the night. Figure out our next move." "He'll follow us." "Let him try." Sam's voice was grim. "I know this land better than any city-bred Virginian. He won't find us." Clara wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him. "Sam." She twisted slightly to look at his face. "Why are you doing this? You barely know me. You could have ridden away, let Edmund take me. It would have been easier." Sam was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. "4 years ago, I made a choice. The easy choice. I followed orders instead of following my gut, and a boy died because of it." He took a breath. "I've been running from that ever since, telling myself there was nothing I could have done, that it wasn't my fault. But deep down, I knew the truth." "What truth?" "That I was a coward." Sam's arms tightened around her slightly. "I'm done being a coward, Miss Thornton. Whatever happens next, I'm not walking away from this. From you." Clara felt tears prick her eyes for the second time that day. "Clara." "What?" "My name is Clara. I think after everything you can stop calling me Miss Thornton." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Clara, then." They rode on in silence, but something had shifted between them. The walls that had kept them both guarded, both isolated, had begun to crack. The line cabin appeared as the last light faded from the sky, a small weathered structure that looked like it hadn't been used in months. But the roof was intact, and when Sam helped Clara inside, she saw that it was dry and relatively clean. "Not much," Sam said, "but it'll keep the rain off." "It's perfect." He helped her settle onto a narrow cot in the corner, then went to work building a fire in the small stone hearth. Clara watched him move, her mind still racing from the events of the day. "Sam?" He looked up. "The boy you mentioned, the one who died. Will you tell me what happened?" For a long moment she thought he would refuse, but then he sat back on his heels, staring into the growing flames. "I was a lawman, a marshal, good at my job, or so I thought." His voice was flat, emotionless. "There was a gang operating near the Texas border, robbing trains, killing passengers. My superiors sent me to bring them in." Clara waited. "I tracked them to a farmhouse, got word they were holed up inside. My orders were clear: take no chances, eliminate the threat." Sam's hands clenched. "So I did. We surrounded the place, called for them to surrender. When they didn't come out, we opened fire." "And the boy?" "He was inside." Sam's voice broke slightly. 16 years old. The gang had taken him hostage the day before. We didn't know. When we stormed the building..." He stopped, unable to continue. Clara's heart ached. "It wasn't your fault." "I pulled the trigger." Sam looked up, and his eyes were haunted. "Maybe I didn't know he was there, but that doesn't change the fact that he's dead because of me. A 16-year-old boy who never did anything wrong except be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And that's why you're out here, alone, punishing yourself." Sam didn't answer. He didn't have to. Clara struggled to sit up, ignoring the pain in her leg. "Sam, look at me." He raised his eyes reluctantly. "What happened to that boy was a tragedy. It was wrong, and it was horrible, and no amount of penance will bring him back. But hiding out here, cutting yourself off from the world, that's not justice. That's just another kind of death." "What would you know about it?" "I know about guilt." Clara's voice was firm. "I know what it's like to carry something heavy everywhere you go, to feel like you don't deserve happiness, to punish yourself for things that weren't entirely your fault. But I also know that at some point you have to choose to live again. Otherwise, what's the point?" Sam stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly something in his expression shifted. "You're something else, Clara Thornton," he said quietly. "Anyone ever tell you that? Once or twice?" A small smile touched her lips, usually as an insult. He almost laughed. Almost. "Get some rest. We've got a long ride tomorrow, and your leg needs to heal." "What about you?" "I'll keep watch. Make sure no one followed us." Clara wanted to argue, but exhaustion was pulling at her. She lay back on the cot watching Sam's silhouette against the firelight. "Sam." "Yeah. Thank you. For everything." He didn't respond, but she saw his shoulders relax slightly, and as she drifted off to sleep, Clara Thornton felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Safe. Outside the prairie stretched endless and dark, and somewhere behind them, Edmund Thornton was still searching. But tonight, at least, she was protected, and tomorrow, whatever came, she wouldn't face it alone. Clara woke to the sound of hoofbeats. Her eyes flew open, heart hammering against her ribs. The fire had burned down to embers, casting the cabin in deep shadows. She pushed herself up on her elbows, ignoring the throb in her leg. "Sam!" No answer. The cot beside her was empty. Clara grabbed the derringer Martha had given her and struggled to her feet, biting back a cry of pain as her weight shifted onto her injured leg. The hoofbeats were closer now, steady and purposeful. The cabin door burst open. Clara raised the pistol finger on the trigger. "Whoa!" Sam held up his hand silhouetted against the gray light of dawn. "It's just me." Clara's arm dropped, the strength draining from her limbs. "God, Sam, I thought—" "I know what you thought." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "I rode back a ways to check if we were followed. We weren't. Edmund's still in Riverbend asking questions." "How do you know?" "Watched him from a ridge. He's got men with him now. 2 of them. Hired guns by the look of it." Clara sank back onto the cot, her hands shaking. "He brought men?" "Seems determined to find you." Sam crouched beside her, his eyes searching her face. "Clara, what exactly does this Edmund have to gain by dragging you back to Virginia?" "Everything." Her voice was hollow. "My husband's estate. The house, the land, the business. William left it all to me when he died. But there's a clause in his will if I remarry within 5 years of his death, the property reverts to the next male relative." "Edmund?" "Yes, unless I marry someone else first." Clara laughed bitterly. "That's why I answered Thomas Whitmore's advertisement. I thought if I married someone far away, Edmund couldn't touch me." Sam's jaw tightened. "So your fiancé in Silverton was a means of escape, nothing more." Clara met his eyes. "I'm not proud of it. Thomas deserved better than to be used as a shield, but I was desperate. And now I don't know what to do." Her voice cracked. "Edmund won't stop Sam, not until he has what he wants. He's patient, he's ruthless, and he has the law on his side." "What do you mean?" Clara hesitated. "Before I left Virginia, Edmund went to a judge, a friend of his family. He claimed I was mentally unfit, grief-stricken, unstable, unable to manage my own affairs. He had you declared incompetent." "He tried. The judge granted him temporary guardianship while the case was being reviewed. That's why I ran." Clara's hands twisted in her lap. "If Edmund catches me, he has legal authority to take me back, to control my money, my property, my life, everything." Sam was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was low and dangerous. "Then we don't let him catch you." "Sam, you don't understand. He'll find me eventually. He always does. And when he does, anyone who's helped me, you, Martha, anyone, they'll suffer too. I've dealt with worse men than Edmund Thornton." "Have you?" Clara looked up sharply. "Because Edmund doesn't fight fair, Sam. He doesn't challenge you to a duel at high noon. He destroys you quietly, systematically, until there's nothing left. He'll find out about your past, about the boy you killed. He'll use it against you." Sam flinched as if she'd struck him. "I'm not trying to hurt you," Clara said quickly. I'm trying to protect you. If Edmund learns what happened in Texas, he won't. You can't know that. I know because I buried that part of my life. Sam stood abruptly, turning away from her. Changed my name, my history, everything. Samuel Garrett doesn't exist in any official record. The man who killed that boy died 4 years ago. Clara stared at his back. You changed your name? Had to. Couldn't live with it anymore, hearing people call me by the name my mother gave me, knowing what I'd done. He paused. My real name is Samuel Reed, but Reed is dead now. He has to stay dead. Sam, we should move. His voice was brusque, closing the subject. Staying in one place too long is dangerous. There's a town about 30 miles north, Clearwater. Bigger than Riverbend, easier to disappear in. We can figure out our next steps there. Clara wanted to push to ask more questions to understand the man who had risked everything to help her. But his posture was rigid, his walls back up. This wasn't the time. All right, she said quietly. Let's go. They rode hard that morning, pushing north across terrain that grew increasingly rough. Clara's leg ached with every stride of the horse, but she gritted her teeth and said nothing. Sam had enough to worry about without her complaining. They stopped briefly at midday to rest the horse and eat the dried meat Sam had packed. Clara studied him as he checked the horizon, his hand resting instinctively on the butt of his revolver. You think they're following us? Edmund's men are city folk. They won't know these trails. Sam handed her a canteen. But they might hire local guides. We need to stay ahead of them. For how long? Long enough. That's not an answer. Sam turned to face her. Clara, I'm making this up as I go. I ain't got a plan beyond keeping you safe and out of Edmund's reach. If you want certainty, I can't give it to you. I don't want certainty. Clara took a long drink from the canteen. I want honesty. And you've given me that, Sam. More than most. Something flickered in his eyes. You deserve better than this. Running across the plains like outlaws. Maybe. But this is the hand I've been dealt. Clara handed back the canteen. And I'd rather be running with you than trapped with Edmund. Sam held her gaze for a moment longer than necessary. Then he turned away, clearing his throat. We should keep moving. They reached Clearwater by late afternoon. It was larger than Riverbend, a proper town with a bank, a hotel, a newspaper office, and a bustling main street. Sam guided them around the edge of town, avoiding the busy areas until they reached a modest boarding house on a quiet side street. Wait here, he said, helping Clara down from the horse. I'll see about a room. He was back within minutes, his expression troubled. What's wrong? Nothing. Got you a room. He handed her a key. But I heard something inside. There's a man been through here asking about a woman from Virginia. Dark hair, gray eyes, traveling alone. Clara's stomach dropped. Edmund, or one of his men. He's moving faster than I expected. Sam glanced around, checking the street. You go inside, stay in your room. I'm going to ask some questions, see what I can find out. Sam, be careful. Always am. He helped her up the stairs and into the small room on the second floor, then disappeared without another word. Clara locked the door behind him and sank onto the bed, her heart pounding. Edmund was here, in Clearwater, or close enough that his reach extended this far. How was he tracking them so quickly? She thought about what Sam had said, that Edmund's men were city folk who wouldn't know the trails. But Edmund was smart. He would hire local help, and with enough money he could buy information from anyone, including perhaps someone they had already trusted. A knock at the door made her jump. Who is it? Hotel manager, ma'am. Got a message for you. Clara hesitated. It could be a trap, but it could also be Sam sending word through an intermediary. She approached the door cautiously, the derringer in her hand. Slide it under the door. A moment's pause, then a folded piece of paper appeared beneath the gap. Clara snatched it up and retreated to the far side of the room before opening it. The handwriting was unfamiliar. Elegant, precise, unmistakably educated. My dearest Clara, I know you're in Clearwater. I know about the cowboy who's been helping you. And I know about his past, the boy he killed in Texas, the name he's been hiding. Come to the hotel lobby at sunset. Alone. We can discuss this like civilized people. If you don't come, I'll be forced to share Mr. Reed's history with the local authorities. I understand there's still a warrant out for his arrest in 3 counties. Your devoted brother-in-law, Edmund. Clara's hands trembled as she read the note again, then a third time. Edmund knew. He knew about Sam, about his real name, about everything. How could he possibly, Martha? The realization hit her like a physical blow. Martha had known about Sam's past. She'd hinted as much when Clara asked about him. And Edmund had been in Riverbend asking questions. Had Martha talked? Or had Edmund found another way to extract the information? It didn't matter. What mattered was that Edmund now had leverage not just over Clara, but over Sam as well. She had to warn him. Clara grabbed her crutch and struggled to the door, unlocking it with shaking hands. She had to find Sam before. The door swung open before she could touch the handle. Edmund Thornton stood in the hallway, flanked by 2 large men in dusty trail clothes. His smile was exactly as she remembered, warm on the surface, cold as ice beneath. Clara, darling. He stepped into the room, forcing her to back away. You look well. A bit thin, perhaps, but the frontier air seems to agree with you. Get out. Now. That's no way to greet family. Edmund nodded to his men, who closed the door behind them and took up positions on either side of it. We have so much to discuss. Clara raised the derringer. I said get out. Edmund's smile didn't waver. You won't shoot me, Clara. You're not a killer. Besides, even if you did, my associates here would ensure you didn't survive the experience. And then what would happen to your cowboy? Don't you dare threaten him. Threaten? Edmund spread his hands innocently. I'm simply stating facts. Samuel Reed, that is his real name, isn't it, is a wanted man. A murderer, technically, even if the circumstances were unfortunate. 1 word from me to the sheriff, and he'll spend the rest of his life in prison. If he's lucky. Clara's arm trembled, but she kept the pistol aimed at Edmund's chest. What do you want? The same thing I've always wanted. You. Edmund took a step closer. Or more precisely, what you represent. William's estate, his business interests, his social standing. Everything that should have been mine by right of birth, but instead went to a woman who wasn't even capable of giving him an heir. That's not my fault. Isn't it? Edmund's voice hardened. William was healthy, virile. He should have had a dozen children. Instead, he spent 3 years married to you and died without a single living child to carry on his name. The children I lost were failures, just like you. Clara felt the words like blows, each one reopening wounds she'd thought had healed. 3 pregnancies in 3 years. 3 losses, each more devastating than the last. And Edmund had blamed her for every single one. You're a monster, she whispered. I'm a pragmatist. Edmund's smile returned. Here's what's going to happen, Clara. You're going to put down that ridiculous little gun. You're going to come with me quietly and without fuss. We'll travel back to Virginia together, and once we're home, we'll be married as quickly as the law allows. I'll never marry you. You don't have a choice. The judge has already ruled you incompetent to manage your own affairs. As your guardian, I have the legal authority to make decisions on your behalf, including the decision to marry you to whomever I see fit. Edmund shrugged. It happens to be me. Convenient, isn't it? That ruling was fraudulent. Everyone knows you bribed Judge Morrison. Can you prove it? Clara's silence was answer enough. I thought not. Edmund extended his hand. Now come along, Clara. Don't make this more difficult than it needs to be. The door exploded inward. Sam burst through his revolver, already drawn his face a mask of cold fury. Before Edmund's men could react, Sam had pistol-whipped the first one across the face, sending him crashing to the floor. The second man lunged forward, but Sam sidestepped, grabbed his arm, and twisted until a sickening crack filled the room. The man screamed and collapsed. Edmund stumbled backward, his composure finally cracking. You can't do this. I have legal authority." "Your legal authority doesn't mean a damn thing out here." Sam leveled his revolver at Edmund's chest. "Clara, you all right?" "I'm fine." "Get behind me." Clara obeyed, her heart pounding. She'd never seen Sam like this, so focused, so dangerous, so utterly without mercy. "You're making a mistake," Edmund said, his voice shaking. "I know who you are, Reed. I know what you did in Texas. One word from me." "Go ahead." Sam's voice was quiet, deadly. "Say it. Tell them all about Samuel Reed and what he did. But ask yourself something first, Edmund. Do you really want to gamble your life on the hope that I won't pull this trigger before you finish talking?" Edmund's face went pale. "I've killed before," Sam continued. "You know that. And unlike what happened in Texas this time, I'd know exactly who I was shooting." He stepped closer, the barrel of his revolver pressing against Edmund's forehead. "So what's it going to be?" For a long, terrible moment, no one moved. Then Edmund's shoulders slumped. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I want you to leave. Go back to Virginia. Forget Clara exists. The estate isn't yours. It never was." Sam's finger tightened on the trigger. "Clara's husband left it to her, not you. Whatever corrupt judges you've bought, whatever lies you've told, that doesn't change the law. The guardianship is based on a fraudulent ruling that won't hold up if challenged in a legitimate court. And believe me, Edmund, when this is over, it will be challenged." Sam leaned closer. "You've been playing games with people's lives because you thought no one would stop you. Well, I'm stopping you, right here, right now." Edmund's eyes darted to Clara. "You'd choose this murderer over your own family." Clara stepped forward, standing beside Sam. "You were never my family, Edmund. You were my captor, and this murderer has shown me more kindness in a week than you showed me in 3 years. Something ugly flickered across Edmund's face. Rage, humiliation, wounded pride. "This isn't over," he hissed. "You can't hide forever, Clara. And when the law catches up with your protector, get out." Sam cocked the hammer of his revolver. "Now, before I decide the world would be better off without you." Edmund straightened his coat with shaking hands. "I'll leave. But mark my words, both of you. This isn't finished." He stepped over his fallen men and walked out the door, his footsteps echoing down the hallway. Sam didn't lower his gun until the sound faded completely. "Clara?" He turned to her, his expression softening. "Are you hurt?" "No, I'm—" Her voice broke, and suddenly she was crying great heaving sobs that she couldn't control. The terror, the tension, the years of fear, all came pouring out at once. Sam holstered his revolver and gathered her into his arms, holding her tight. "It's all right," he murmured against her hair. "You're safe. I've got you." "He'll come back," Clara sobbed. "He always comes back. Let him try." Sam pulled back slightly, cupping her face in his hands. "Clara, look at me." She raised her tear-streaked eyes to his. "I meant what I said before. I'm done running. I'm done hiding." His thumb brushed away a tear. "Whatever happens next, we face it together. You understand?" Clara nodded, unable to speak. "Good." Sam released her and stepped back, his manner becoming practical again. "We need to move. Edmund's men will wake up soon, and he might have more waiting somewhere. Can you ride?" "Yes." "Then let's go." They left Clearwater within the hour, riding northwest toward the mountains. Clara clung to Sam's back, her arms wrapped around his waist, her cheek pressed against his shoulder. Behind them, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. Ahead, the mountains loomed dark and forbidding, full of unknown dangers. But for the first time since she'd fled Virginia, Clara wasn't afraid. She was done running. Whatever came next, she would face it, standing up. They rode until full dark, then made camp in a sheltered hollow where the mountains met the plains. Sam built a small fire just enough for warmth, not enough to be spotted from a distance, and helped Clara settle onto a bed of pine needles. "Your leg," he said, frowning at the splint. "We pushed too hard today. Let me check it." Clara extended her leg obediently, watching as Sam examined the bandages with careful fingers. "It's holding," he said finally. "But you need rest. Real rest, not running from town to town." "We don't exactly have that luxury." "We will." Sam met her eyes. "There's a place I know up in the mountains. A cabin that belonged to a friend of mine he passed a few years back, left it to me. It's isolated, hidden, defensible. We can hole up there while you heal." "And then what?" "Then we figure out how to deal with Edmund once and for all." Sam's jaw tightened. "What he said about the guardianship, is it true? Could he really force you to marry him?" "Under Virginia law, yes, if the ruling stands." "What would it take to overturn it?" Clara considered. "Testimony from a doctor declaring me mentally competent. Evidence that Edmund bribed the judge. A legitimate court hearing." She shook her head. "None of which I can obtain while I'm running." "Then we stop running and start fighting." Clara looked up at him. "Sam, you heard what Edmund said. There's a warrant out for your arrest. If we go to court, if we challenge the ruling, your past will come out." "I know." "You could go to prison, or worse." "I know that too." Sam sat down beside her close enough that their shoulders touched. "Clara, 4 years ago, I made a terrible mistake. A boy died because I followed orders instead of trusting my instincts. I've spent every day since then running from that guilt, hiding from who I used to be." He paused, staring into the flames. "But running hasn't brought that boy back. And hiding hasn't made the guilt go away. Maybe it's time I stopped trying to escape my past and started facing it." "Sam? I can't ask you to do that." "You're not asking. I'm offering." He turned to look at her, his blue eyes reflecting the firelight. "Clara, in the past week you've reminded me what it feels like to live again, to care about something besides my own misery. If standing up for you means facing the consequences of my past, then that's a price I'm willing to pay." Clara felt tears threatening again. Why would you risk everything for someone you barely know?" Sam was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly he reached out and took her hand. "Because sometimes you meet someone who makes you want to be better than you are. Someone who sees past all your mistakes and failures and still believes you're worth saving." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "You're that someone for me, Clara. I don't know how or why, but from the moment I found you in that stagecoach, something changed." "Sam, you don't have to say anything. I'm not asking for promises or declarations. I just want you to know that whatever happens next, I'm with you, all the way." Clara squeezed his hand, her heart too full for words. They sat together in silence as the fire burned low and the stars wheeled overhead. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, a lonely sound that echoed across the empty plains. But Clara didn't feel lonely anymore. For the first time in years, she felt like she belonged somewhere, with someone. Whatever tomorrow brought, they would face it together. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. The fire had burned down to embers when Clara finally spoke. "Sam?" "Yeah. Thank you. For everything." He didn't answer with words. Instead, he lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles. It was enough. The mountain cabin sat nestled in a narrow valley, hidden from the main trails by dense pine forest and a ridge of jagged rock. Sam hadn't lied. It was isolated, protected, and virtually invisible to anyone who didn't know exactly where to look. Clara leaned against the doorframe, watching as Sam unloaded supplies from the horse. Her leg throbbed with each heartbeat, but she refused to sit down. She'd spent too much time being helpless. "You should rest," Sam called without looking up. "I've been resting for days." "Your leg says otherwise." Clara ignored him and limped toward the small table near the window. On it sat a stack of yellowed papers, a pen, and an inkwell that had dried to a crust. "Your friend," she said, "the one who left you this place, what happened to him?" Sam paused, a sack of flour in his hands. "Died of the fever. Winter of '73. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. He lived his life on his own terms. More than most can say." Clara touched the papers gently. "These are legal documents. Jacob was a lawyer, before he came west." Sam set down the flour and walked over to stand beside her. "He used to say the law was the only thing standing between civilization and chaos. Of course, he also said sometimes the law was worse than the chaos. Smart man. Smart enough to know when to run." Sam picked up one of the documents, scanning it. He helped a lot of people in his time, freed slaves trying to start over, women escaping bad husbands, folks who needed someone to fight for them when no one else would. Clara looked up at him. "Is that why you came here when you needed to disappear?" Sam nodded slowly. Jacob didn't ask questions, just said everyone deserved a second chance long as they were willing to earn it. "And did you earn it?" "Still trying." Sam set down the document and met her eyes. "Maybe helping you is part of that." Before Clara could respond, a sound cut through the morning stillness. Hoofbeats, multiple horses, coming fast. Sam's hand went to his revolver. "Get inside, now!" Clara didn't argue. She grabbed her crutch and hobbled toward the back of the cabin as quickly as her leg would allow. Sam moved to the window, positioning himself where he could see without being seen. "How many?" Clara whispered. "3 riders, maybe 4. Sam's voice was calm, controlled. "Could be Edmund's men, could be something else. Something else. Not everyone in these mountains is friendly." The hoofbeats slowed, then stopped. Clara heard voices too distant to make out words, but close enough to send fear crawling up her spine. Then a voice called out clear and strong. "Sam Garrett! I know you're in there. Come out peaceful-like and we can talk." Sam's shoulders relaxed slightly. "I know that voice." He moved to the door and opened it, stepping onto the narrow porch with his hand still on his revolver. Clara crept closer to the window, peering out. 3 men sat on horseback in the clearing. The one in front was older, perhaps 60, with a silver badge pinned to his chest and a weathered face that had seen more than its share of trouble. "Sheriff Carson." Sam's voice was neutral. "Long way from Clearwater." "Long ride for an old man," the sheriff agreed. "But then some things are worth the trip." "What brings you out here?" "A man named Edmund Thornton." Carson shifted in his saddle. "He came to my office this morning demanding I arrest you for kidnapping his sister-in-law. Claims you took her against her will." Clara's blood turned to ice. "That's a lie," Sam said flatly. "Maybe. Maybe not." Carson's eyes narrowed. "Why don't you let the lady come out and tell me herself?" Sam glanced back at the cabin. Clara met his eyes through the window and nodded. Whatever happened, she wasn't going to hide anymore. She stepped out onto the porch, her crutch tapping against the wooden planks. "I'm Clara Thornton, Sheriff, and I came with Mr. Garrett willingly." Carson studied her for a long moment. "Ma'am, you're hurt. That man in there been treating you right. Better than anyone in years." Clara lifted her chin. "Edmund Thornton is my dead husband's brother. He's been trying to force me into marriage to steal my inheritance. Everything he told you is a lie." "That's a serious accusation." "It's the truth. I have nothing to hide." Carson dismounted slowly, his joints creaking with the movement. He approached the porch, his deputies staying mounted behind him. "Mr. Thornton showed me some papers," he said. Court documents from Virginia. Says you've been declared mentally unfit. Says he's your legal guardian. Those papers are fraudulent. The judge who signed them is in Edmund's pocket. Can you prove it? Clara hesitated. No, not here. But if you take me back to Clearwater, give me time. Time ain't something you've got a lot of, ma'am. Carson scratched his chin. Mr. Thornton's made it clear he ain't leaving without you. He's got lawyers' money connections. Even if what you say is true, fighting him in court could take months. Years, maybe. So you're just going to hand her over? Sam's voice was cold. Carson turned to face him. I didn't say that. Then what are you saying? The sheriff was quiet for a moment. I've been wearing this badge for 23 years. In that time I've learned to read people pretty well. And right now I'm looking at a woman who's scared but not broken, and a man who's protecting her with everything he's got. He paused. I'm also looking at a fancy Virginia gentleman who smiles too much and talks too smooth. Clara's heart stuttered. You believe us? I believe something ain't right about this whole situation. Carson pulled a folded paper from his pocket. But believing and proving are two different things. Legally, Mr. Thornton has the upper hand. Unless someone can find evidence that those court documents are false, my hands are tied. There is evidence, Clara said suddenly. Back in Virginia. My husband's lawyer, James Fairfax, he knew what Edmund was planning. He tried to warn me before I left, but I was too scared to listen. Where is this lawyer now? Richmond. At least he was when I left. Carson nodded thoughtfully. If we could get word to him, get him to send a sworn statement contradicting Thornton's claims. It would take weeks, Sam interrupted. We don't have weeks. Then we buy time. Carson looked between them. I can stall Thornton. Tell him you weren't here, that I'm still searching. A man like him doesn't know these mountains. He'll have to trust my word. Why would you do that? Clara asked. You don't know us. No, ma'am, I don't. Carson's expression softened. But I knew Jacob Wells, knew what he stood for, and why he helped the people he did. If Sam brought you here to Jacob's place, that tells me something about your situation. He turned to Sam. Jacob would have wanted me to help, so that's what I'm doing. Sam extended his hand. I won't forget this. See that you don't. Carson shook it firmly. I'll be back in a few days. By then you'd better have a plan that doesn't involve running forever. He remounted his horse, tipped his hat to Clara, and rode away with his deputies following close behind. Clara sagged against the porch railing, her legs suddenly weak. He could have taken me, right then and there. But he didn't. Why, he doesn't owe us anything. Sam moved to stand beside her. Because not everyone is corrupt, Clara. Not everyone can be bought. Some folks still believe in doing what's right, even when it costs them. Clara looked up at him. Do you believe that? I want to. Sam's jaw tightened. I used to believe in the law and justice and all those things. Then I killed that boy, and everything I thought I knew fell apart. What happened to you wasn't justice. It was a tragedy. It was my hands that pulled the trigger, following orders that should never have been given. Clara reached out and took his hand. Sam, you've spent 4 years punishing yourself for something that wasn't entirely your fault. When does it end? He didn't answer. His eyes were distant, haunted by ghosts she couldn't see. You saved my life, Clara continued. Not just in the stagecoach, but every day since. You've protected me, cared for me, fought for me. That's not the behavior of a monster. Clara, let me finish. She squeezed his hand. I don't know what's going to happen with Edmund. I don't know if we'll find a way to beat him legally, or if we'll spend the rest of our lives running. But I do know this, you are not the man you were 4 years ago. And whoever Samuel Reed was, he's not the man standing in front of me right now. Sam's eyes finally focused on her face. And who is that, the man standing in front of you? Someone worth fighting for? Clara's voice broke slightly. Someone She couldn't finish. The words caught in her throat, too big, too terrifying to say aloud. But Sam understood. She could see it in his eyes, in the way his grip on her hand tightened. "Clara." His voice was rough. "We shouldn't. I can't offer you anything. No home, no security, no future. Just trouble and more trouble." "I don't care about security. I had security with William, and it was a gilded cage. I had the promise of security with Thomas, and it was an escape route." Clara stepped closer. "What I want is something real, something true. And for the first time in my life, I think I've found it." Sam's free hand came up to cup her face. "You're sure about this?" "I've never been more sure of anything." He kissed her, then, not a gentle, questioning kiss, but a fierce, desperate one that spoke of years of loneliness and longing finally finding their answer. Clara melted into him, her crutch clattering to the porch floor as her arms wound around his neck. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Sam rested his forehead against hers. "Whatever happens," he said, "we face it together." "Together," Clara echoed. The next 3 days passed in a strange kind of peace. Sam taught Clara how to shoot properly, not just the small derringer Martha had given her, but a real revolver. Her aim was terrible at first, but she improved with practice, and there was something deeply satisfying about hitting the tin can targets Sam set up behind the cabin. "Not bad," he said after she hit 3 in a row. "Few more weeks you might actually be dangerous." "I'm already dangerous," Clara replied, lowering the gun. "Just ask Edmund." Sam laughed, a real laugh, not the half-hearted chuckle she'd grown used to. The sound made something warm bloom in her chest. They talked too. For hours sometimes. About Clara's childhood in Virginia, about Sam's years in the cavalry, about their hopes and fears and dreams. Clara learned that Sam wanted to raise horses someday on a piece of land where no one would bother him. Sam learned that Clara had once dreamed of being a teacher before her father insisted she marry well instead. "Maybe it's not too late," Sam said one evening as they sat by the fire. "For your dream, I mean." "I'm 25, and running from my brother-in-law across the frontier. I think my teaching days are behind me." "Age is just a number, and circumstances change." Clara smiled. "Is that your way of saying we're going to beat Edmund?" "It's my way of saying nothing is impossible." Sam took her hand. "If there's one thing I've learned out here, it's that the frontier makes new people out of old ones. You don't have to be who Virginia said you were. Out here, you can be whoever you want." "And who do you want to be?" Sam considered. "Someone my mother would be proud of. Someone who protects instead of destroys. Someone who—" He stopped. "Someone who, what?" "Someone who deserves you," he finished quietly. Clara leaned over and kissed him softly. "You already are." The peace shattered on the 4th day. Clara was inside the cabin practicing her reading. Sam had found some of Jacob's old books, including a well-worn copy of Shakespeare's sonnets, when she heard the shot. Her blood turned to ice. "Sam!" She grabbed her crutch and her revolver and hobbled to the door. Outside, she could see Sam crouched behind a water trough returning fire toward the tree line. "Get back inside," he shouted. "How many?" "At least 4, maybe more." Another shot cracked through the air, splintering wood near Sam's head. Edmund brought reinforcements. Clara ducked back into the cabin and moved to the window. Through the dirty glass, she could see muzzle flashes from the trees at least 3 distinct positions. Professional. Coordinated. Not random outlaws. Hired guns. She raised her revolver and aimed at the nearest flash. Her hands were shaking, but she remembered Sam's instructions. Breathe. Steady. Squeeze. The gun kicked in her hand. She didn't know if she'd hit anything, but the firing from that position stopped. "Good shot," Sam called. "Keep them pinned down." Clara fired again, then again. Her ears rang, her arms ached, but she kept shooting until her gun clicked empty. "Sam, I'm out. Reload box on the table." Clara hobbled to the table, her fingers fumbling with the ammunition box. She'd practiced this, loading the revolver quickly and efficiently, but everything was different when people were shooting at you. The front door exploded inward. Clara screamed and raised the half-loaded revolver as a man burst through his face, a mask of rage. She recognized him, one of Edmund's men from the hotel in Clearwater. "Drop it!" he snarled, leveling his own gun at her chest. Clara's finger tightened on the trigger. One shot. She had one shot loaded. "Don't be stupid, girl. You can't hit me before I hit you." "Maybe not." Clara's voice was steadier than she felt. "But I'm willing to find out." The man hesitated. It was all the time Sam needed. He appeared in the doorway behind the intruder, his revolver pressed against the back of the man's skull. "Drop it," Sam said coldly. "Now." The man's gun clattered to the floor. "On your knees. Hands behind your head." He obeyed, his bravado evaporating in the face of Sam's deadly calm. "Clara, you all right?" "I'm fine." Her voice was shaking now, reaction setting in. "The others?" "Dealt with." Sam didn't elaborate. "This one's going to tell us exactly where Edmund is and what he's planning. Aren't you?" The man spat on the floor. "Go to hell." Sam's pistol cracked against the man's temple, not hard enough to knock him out, but hard enough to make a point. "Let's try that again. Where is Edmund Thornton?" Blood trickled down the man's face. "In town. The hotel." "How many more men does he have?" 6, 8 maybe. More coming from Denver." "More coming from Denver." Clara felt her stomach drop. "He's building an army. He don't plan on losing." The man's smile was ugly despite the blood. "You got no idea who you're dealing with, lady. Thornton's got connections that go all the way to the governor's office. He'll bury you both, and no one will ever find the bodies." Sam hauled the man to his feet. "We'll see about that." He tied the man to a chair with practiced efficiency, then turned to Clara. "We need to move. If this one found us, others will too." "Where do we go?" "Clearwater, to the sheriff." "But Edmund's there." "Exactly." Sam's jaw was set. "We're done running, Clara. It's time to fight." They rode hard through the afternoon, Sam's captured prisoner thrown across the back of a pack horse like a sack of grain. By the time they reached Clearwater, the sun was beginning to set. Sheriff Carson met them at the edge of town, his expression grim. "Saw you coming," he said. "Expected you might show up sooner rather than later." "Edmund sent men to kill us," Sam said without preamble. "This one's the only survivor." Carson looked at the bound man, then at Sam. "You've been busy." "Self-defense." "I believe you." The sheriff sighed. "But Thornton's not going to see it that way. He's been raising hell since I told him I couldn't find you. Threatening to go over my head, bring in federal marshals, all manner of things." "Let him threaten." Clara spoke up, her voice stronger than she felt. "We're done hiding." Carson raised an eyebrow. "You got a plan. We need a public hearing, a fair one with witnesses. If we can prove Edmund's guardianship papers are fraudulent, his entire case falls apart." "And how do you plan to prove that?" Clara took a deep breath. "I'm going to challenge him directly. Force him to defend his claims in front of the whole town." Sam's head whipped toward her. "Clara, it's the only way." She met his eyes. "Edmund's power comes from secrecy and manipulation. He operates in shadows, buys judges, intimidates witnesses. But if we drag everything into the light, if we make people see what he really is—" "It's risky," Carson said. "If it backfires, you've got nothing. I've got the truth, and I've got Sam." Clara looked at the sheriff directly. "All I'm asking for is a chance, a fair hearing before an impartial judge. Can you arrange that?" Carson was silent for a long moment. "There's a circuit judge coming through town tomorrow. Honest man, far as I know. Can't be bought." "Then we do it tomorrow." "Clara." Sam's voice was tight. "Edmund will fight dirty. He'll say anything, do anything to win. I know. Clara took his hand. But I'm tired of being afraid. I'm tired of running. Whatever happens tomorrow, at least I'll know I stood up for myself. Sam squeezed her hand. Then I'll be right beside you. You understand what that means, Carson said quietly. If Thornton brings up your past, let him. Sam's voice was steady. I'm done running too. The sheriff nodded slowly, a hint of respect in his eyes. All right then. I'll make the arrangements. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock at the town hall. He paused. Get some rest tonight. Both of you. You're going to need it. They found a room at a boarding house on the opposite side of town from Edmund's hotel. Clara sat on the edge of the narrow bed, her hands clasped in her lap, her heart racing. Scared? Sam asked, settling beside her. Terrified. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. He put an arm around her shoulders. But you're not alone in this, Clara. Whatever happens tomorrow, I'm with you. Clara leaned into him. Sam, if Edmund reveals your past, if the judge decides to act on it, then I'll face the consequences. You could go to prison. Maybe. Sam's voice was quiet. But 4 years ago, I ran from what I did. I let the guilt eat me alive instead of facing it head on. Tomorrow I have a chance to do things differently. He paused. To stand up for something, for someone, even if it costs me everything. Clara pulled back to look at him. You'd do that, for me. Clara. Sam cupped her face in his hands. I'd burn the whole world down for you. He kissed her, then gentle and fierce at once, pouring into it everything he couldn't say in words. Clara kissed him back, her fingers tangling in his hair, her heart full to bursting. When they finally separated, Sam rested his forehead against hers. Get some sleep, he murmured. Tomorrow, we fight. Tomorrow we win, Clara corrected. Sam smiled a real smile, warm and hopeful, and impossibly beautiful. Yeah, he said softly. We do. But as Clara drifted off to sleep in Sam's arms, she couldn't shake the feeling that Edmund Thornton had one more card to play. And whatever it was, it would change everything. The town hall was packed by 9 o'clock. Clara stood at the front of the room, her hands clasped tightly to hide their trembling. Sam stood beside her, his jaw set, his eyes scanning the crowd with the wariness of a man expecting an ambush. Edmund Thornton sat at the opposite table, immaculately dressed in a dark suit, his expression one of wounded concern. The performance was flawless. The worried brother-in-law, the victim of a hysterical woman's accusations. Clara wanted to scream. Judge Harrison entered through a side door, a lean, silver-haired man with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense manner. He took his seat at the raised desk and surveyed the room. This is an informal hearing, he announced, not a trial. I'm here to determine whether Mrs. Clara Thornton is legally bound by the guardianship documents presented by Mr. Edmund Thornton, or whether those documents should be set aside pending further investigation. He looked at Edmund. Mr. Thornton, you may present your case first. Edmund rose with practiced grace. Thank you, Your Honor. The facts here are simple. My brother William, God rest his soul, died 2 years ago. His widow Clara was understandably distraught. Her grief manifested in increasingly erratic behavior, wild accusations, irrational fears, refusal to engage with family or friends. That's not true, Clara said. Mrs. Thornton, you'll have your turn, Judge Harrison said firmly. Edmund continued, his voice dripping with false sympathy. Concerned for her well-being, I petitioned the court in Virginia for temporary guardianship. Judge Morrison, a respected jurist with 30 years on the bench, examined the evidence and agreed that Clara was not capable of managing her own affairs. What evidence? Clara couldn't stop herself. What evidence did you present? Mrs. Thornton, I have a right to know what lies he told about me. Judge Harrison's gavel cracked against his desk. Order Mrs. Thornton, control yourself, or I will have you removed. Clara bit her tongue so hard she tasted blood. Sam's hand found hers under the table, a silent reminder that she wasn't alone. Edmund smiled. As I was saying, Your Honor, the guardianship was granted legally and properly. Since then, Clara has fled across multiple states, falling under the influence of— He gestured toward Sam, this man. A drifter, a stranger, someone with his own troubled past. What's that supposed to mean? Sam's voice was low and dangerous. I'm simply stating facts, Mr. Garrett. Or should I say, Mr. Reed. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Clara felt Sam stiffen beside her. 4 years ago, Edmund continued, a man named Samuel Reed served as a deputy marshal in Texas. During a raid on a suspected outlaw hideout, he shot and killed an innocent 16-year-old boy. The boy's family demanded justice, but Reed fled before he could face charges. He's been hiding ever since, changing his name, drifting from town to town, avoiding the consequences of his actions. That's enough. Sam rose to his feet. You want to talk about my past, Thornton? Fine. Let's talk about it. Sam, don't, Clara began. No. Sam's voice was steady, his eyes fixed on Edmund. I'm done hiding. He turned to face the judge. Everything he said is true. 4 years ago, I was part of a raid that went wrong. A boy died. A boy I shot because I was following orders instead of thinking for myself. The crowd erupted in whispers. Judge Harrison banged his gavel for quiet. I've spent every day since then running from that guilt, Sam continued, punishing myself for something I can never undo. But here's what Thornton didn't tell you: there's no warrant out for my arrest. The shooting was ruled justified by 2 separate inquiries. I wasn't charged because there was nothing to charge me with. Edmund's smile faltered. That's not— Check the records. Sam interrupted. I have the documents. The investigation concluded that the raid was conducted according to protocol, and that the boy's death, while tragic, was not the result of criminal negligence. He pulled a folded paper from his pocket and handed it to the judge. This is a certified copy of the final ruling. Judge Harrison examined the document carefully. This appears to be authentic. It is. Sam's voice was hard. Thornton's been lying. About me, about Clara, about everything. He's not trying to protect her, he's trying to control her, to steal what rightfully belongs to her. Lies. Edmund slammed his hand on the table. Your Honor, this man is a murderer and a criminal. The document says otherwise, Mr. Thornton. Judge Harrison's tone was cool. Do you have evidence to contradict it? Edmund's face reddened. The records I obtained were falsified, Clara spoke up. Just like the guardianship papers. Mrs. Thornton. My husband's lawyer warned me, Your Honor, James Fairfax of Richmond. He tried to tell me that Edmund was planning to forge documents, bribe judges, do whatever it took to get his hands on William's estate. Clara stood, her voice growing stronger. I didn't believe him at first. I thought Edmund was family. I thought he cared about me. But then I saw who he really was. And who is that Mrs. Thornton? A man who told me I was worthless because I couldn't give his brother children. A man who blamed me for miscarriages that broke my heart 3 times over. A man who threatened to lock me away in an asylum if I didn't agree to marry him. Clara's voice shook, but she didn't stop. He's not my guardian, Your Honor. He's my jailer. And I'm done being his prisoner. The room had gone completely silent. Edmund recovered quickly, his expression shifting back to that mask of concern. Your Honor, this is exactly the kind of erratic, paranoid behavior that led to the guardianship ruling in the first place. Clara is clearly unstable. Am I? Clara turned to face him directly. Then why did you send armed men to kill me, Edmund? Why did you attack the cabin where I was staying? 4 men with guns. That's not the behavior of a concerned guardian. That's the behavior of a man who's desperate to eliminate a problem. I don't know what you're talking about. One of your men is in Sheriff Carson's custody right now. He's already confessed to being hired by you. Clara stepped closer, her fear finally giving way to fury. "It's over, Edmund. All your lies, all your schemes, they're finished." Edmund's face contorted with rage. "You ungrateful little—" "Mr. Thornton." Judge Harrison's voice cracked like a whip. "You will conduct yourself with decorum in my courtroom, or you will be removed." Edmund visibly struggled to compose himself. "Your Honor, surely you can see that this woman is manipulating." "What I see, Mr. Thornton is a man who has presented questionable documents, made accusations that have been contradicted by official records, and is now becoming hostile when challenged." The judge set down his gavel. "I'm inclined to side with Mrs. Thornton on this matter." "You can't—" "However," Judge Harrison held up his hand, "I would need additional evidence to formally set aside the guardianship. Mrs. Thornton, you mentioned a lawyer in Richmond. Is there any way to verify his claims?" Clara's heart sank. "I don't know. I haven't been able to contact him." The doors at the back of the hall burst open. Everyone turned. A man stood in the doorway, middle-aged, travel-worn, clutching a leather satchel, as if his life depended on it. "I apologize for the interruption, Your Honor," he said, striding forward. "But I believe I have the evidence you're looking for." Clara's breath caught. "Mr. Fairfax." "James." Fairfax, her late husband's lawyer, stopped in front of the judge's desk and opened his satchel. "Your Honor, my name is James Fairfax. I was the legal counsel for William Thornton until his death 2 years ago. I've traveled from Virginia to present evidence that the guardianship documents currently being used to control Mrs. Thornton were obtained through fraud and bribery." Edmund's face went white. "This is preposterous. I have here sworn affidavits from 3 clerks in Judge Morrison's office stating that they witnessed Edmund Thornton paying substantial bribes to have the guardianship papers approved." Fairfax spread the documents on the judge's desk. "I also have bank records showing large deposits to Judge Morrison's personal accounts from a company controlled by Edmund Thornton." "How did you—" Edmund sputtered. "I've been building this case for 18 months, Mr. Thornton. Ever since I realized what you were planning." Fairfax's voice was cold. "You should have left Mrs. Thornton alone." Judge Harrison examined the documents, his expression growing darker with each page. "These are serious allegations, Mr. Fairfax. If what you're saying is true, it is true, every word of it. Then we have a much larger problem than a simple guardianship dispute." The judge looked up at Edmund. "Mr. Thornton, based on the evidence presented, I am immediately setting aside the guardianship ruling. Furthermore, I am recommending that you be detained pending a full investigation into charges of fraud, bribery, and conspiracy." "You can't do this." Edmund's composure finally shattered. "Do you know who I am? Do you know who my family is?" "I know who you are, Mr. Thornton." Sheriff Carson stepped forward, his hand on his revolver. "You're a man who's about to be arrested." Edmund lunged for Clara. Sam moved faster. He intercepted Edmund before he could take 2 steps, slamming him against the table with enough force to crack the wood. Edmund struggled, but Sam's grip was iron. "Touch her again," Sam said quietly, "and no law in the world will protect you." "You're making a mistake," Edmund hissed. "Both of you. This isn't over." "Yes, it is." Clara stepped forward, looking down at the man who had terrorized her for 2 years. "William loved me, Edmund. He trusted me. And in the end he saw you for what you really are. That's why he left everything to me instead of you." "That was a mistake. He was weak, blinded by... He was kind. Something you'll never understand." Clara turned away. "Sheriff, please get him out of my sight." Carson and his deputies hauled Edmund to his feet and dragged him toward the door. As he passed Clara, he twisted in their grip, his face contorted with hatred. "This isn't finished, Clara. You'll never be free of me. Never." "I already am," Clara said softly. The doors closed behind him. For a moment, the room was silent. Then slowly the crowd began to murmur, then to talk, then to cheer. Clara found herself surrounded by townsfolk she barely knew, all offering congratulations. apologies, support. But she only had eyes for one person. Sam stood at the edge of the crowd, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Clara pushed through the well-wishers and stopped in front of him. "You came forward," she said. "You told them everything about your past." "Had to. You didn't have to. You could have stayed silent, let Fairfax handle it." "Clara." Sam took her hands. "I meant what I said. I'm done hiding. Whatever comes next, I face it head on." He paused. "Besides, it felt good. For the first time in 4 years, I'm not carrying that weight alone." "You were never alone. Not really." Clara squeezed his hands. "You just didn't know it yet." James Fairfax approached, his expression warm, despite his evident exhaustion. "Mrs. Thornton, it's good to see you safe." "Mr. Fairfax, I don't know how to thank you. How did you even know where to find me?" "Your uncle contacted me after you sent word from Riverbend. He told me everything that had happened." Fairfax smiled slightly. "I've been on Edmund's trail for months gathering evidence. When I learned he'd followed you west, I knew it was time to act. You saved me." "I simply did what William would have wanted." Fairfax's expression softened. "He loved you, Clara, more than you know. In his final days, he made me promise to protect you if anything happened. I'm only sorry it took me so long to fulfill that promise." Clara felt tears prick her eyes. William knew about Edmund's plans. He suspected. That's why he changed his will at the last minute, to ensure you would be provided for no matter what. Fairfax glanced at Sam. "And it seems you found someone else who's willing to fight for you." Sam shifted uncomfortably. "I just did what anyone would do." "No, Mr. Garrett, you did what few would have the courage to do." Fairfax extended his hand. "William would have approved." Sam shook it, looking uncertain about how to respond. Judge Harrison approached the formal hearing, clearly concluded. "Mrs. Thornton, the guardianship has been officially dissolved. You're free to manage your own affairs, including your late husband's estate." "Thank you, Your Honor." "Additionally, I'll be sending a report to the Virginia State Bar regarding Judge Morrison's conduct. What Edmund Thornton did couldn't have happened without corrupt officials enabling him." Harrison's expression was grim. "Justice may be slow, but it will come." Clara nodded. "That's all I can ask." As the crowd began to disperse, Clara found herself standing with Sam on the steps of the town hall. The morning sun was warm on her face, and for the first time in months, she felt like she could breathe. "What now?" Sam asked. "I don't know." Clara turned to look at him. "What do you want?" Sam was quiet for a moment. "I told you once about a piece of land I wanted. A place to raise horses. Somewhere peaceful." "I remember. I've got enough saved to buy it. It's not much, a few acres, a small cabin, but it could be something with time." "Sam, are you asking me?" "I'm asking if you'd consider staying." His voice was rough. "Not because you have nowhere else to go, not because you need protection, but because I can't imagine my life without you in it." Clara felt her heart swell. "Sam Garrett, you've known me for 2 weeks." "I know. Too soon, probably. Crazy, definitely." He took her hands. "But I've spent 4 years dead inside Clara. Wandering from place to place, running from my past, convinced I didn't deserve anything good. Then I found you in that stagecoach, broken and abandoned, and something changed." "What changed?" "I did." Sam's eyes were bright with emotion he'd spent years suppressing. "You made me want to be better, to stop running, to build something instead of just surviving." He paused. "I love you, Clara. I know that might scare you. It scares me too. But it's true." Clara stared at him, her mind racing. Everything he said was right. It was too soon. It was crazy. It went against every rule of propriety she'd ever been taught. But when had following the rules ever made her happy? "The land you mentioned," she said slowly. "Where is it?" "About 30 miles north, near the mountains. There's good water, good grazing." Sam's voice was hesitant. "It's not Virginia. No fancy houses or society parties. I never cared about those things. What do you care about? Clara reached up and cupped his face in her hands. This, you. A chance to start over with someone who sees me for who I really am. Clara. I love you too, Sam. I think I have since you carried me out of that stagecoach. She smiled through tears she didn't bother to wipe away. So yes, I'll stay. I'll build something with you. Whatever that looks like, wherever it leads, I'm in. Sam kissed her, then right there on the steps of the town hall in front of anyone who cared to watch. Clara kissed him back, pouring into it all the hope and joy and love she'd thought she'd never feel again. When they finally broke apart, Sam was grinning a real grin, the kind that transformed his entire face. We should probably do this properly, he said. Get married, I mean, before the whole territory starts talking. Let them talk, Clara laughed. I've been the subject of gossip my whole life. Might as well give them something worth gossiping about. Is that a yes? That's a definitely. They were married 3 weeks later in the small church in Clearwater. It wasn't a grand wedding, no society guests, no elaborate gown, no musicians imported from the city. Just Clara in a simple white dress, Sam in his best shirt and jacket, and a handful of people who had become against all odds their community. Sheriff Carson was there standing near the back with a rare smile on his weathered face. Martha Henson had traveled from Riverbend to serve as Clara's witness, her sharp eyes suspiciously bright throughout the ceremony. James Fairfax represented William's memory, his presence a blessing from Clara's past. And standing beside Sam, as his best man, was a young deputy named Thomas, who had been part of Carson's original posse, a boy barely 20 years old, who had, Sam said, reminded him of someone he'd lost. The ceremony was short. The vows were simple. But when Sam slipped the ring onto Clara's finger, a thin gold band he'd ridden 2 days to purchase, Clara felt something shift in her heart. She was no longer Clara Thornton, the grieving widow. No longer the woman who had fled Virginia in desperation, who had answered a stranger's advertisement because she had no other options. She was Clara Garrett now, and the name felt like freedom. Well, Mrs. Garrett, Sam murmured as the small congregation applauded. What do you think? I think, Clara said, rising on tiptoe to kiss her husband, that I'm finally home. 2 years passed. The ranch prospered beyond anything Sam had dared to hope. The horses he raised became known throughout the territory for their strength and temperament, and buyers traveled from as far as Denver to examine his stock. Clara discovered that frontier life suited her far better than Virginia ever had. She learned to ride, to shoot, to mend fences, and tend livestock. More importantly, she found a purpose teaching the children of neighboring ranches to read and write, just as she'd once dreamed. The schoolhouse was small, just a single-room addition to the main cabin, but it was hers. Every morning, 6 children from surrounding homesteads would ride up the mountain path, and Clara would spend the day filling their minds with words and numbers and stories. It wasn't the life she'd imagined when she first boarded that stagecoach to Silverton. It was better. Edmund Thornton was convicted of fraud and bribery, sentenced to 15 years in a federal penitentiary. Clara heard the news from James Fairfax, who wrote faithfully twice a year with updates on her Virginia affairs. She felt nothing, no satisfaction, no lingering anger. Edmund was part of a past that no longer defined her. Thomas Whitmore, the merchant she'd been traveling to marry, had eventually found another bride, a widow from California with 3 children who needed a father. Clara wished them well and felt grateful that fate had intervened before she'd made a terrible mistake. And Sam had stopped running. The nightmares still came sometimes and probably always would, but now when he woke, gasping in the dark, Clara was there beside him. She would hold him until his breathing steadied, whisper reassurances until the ghosts retreated, love him through the darkness until morning came. He'd made peace with his past, though it hadn't been easy. He'd written to the family of the boy he'd killed, a letter that had taken him 3 weeks to compose and another week to find the courage to send. Their response had been unexpected, not forgiveness exactly, but understanding. They'd lost their son to a tragedy, not to malice. Knowing that the man who had pulled the trigger still carried the weight of that death had given them, they wrote a small measure of peace. Sam had wept when he read those words. Clara had held him for hours. Now, on a golden September afternoon, 2 years after their wedding, Clara sat on the porch of their cabin, watching Sam work with a new foal in the paddock below. Her hand rested on her belly, which had just begun to swell with the child they'd never dared hope for. She hadn't told him yet. She was waiting for the right moment. Clara. She looked up. Sam was walking toward the house, the foal trailing behind him, like an oversized puppy. "Come meet our newest addition," he called. "I'm thinking of naming her Hope." Clara laughed and rose carefully from her chair. "Hope? That's a bit sentimental for you, isn't it?" "Maybe I've changed." Sam met her at the bottom of the porch steps, his eyes warm. "Maybe someone changed me." Clara reached out to stroke the foal's velvety nose. "Hope is a good name, but I think we might need another one soon." "Another foal? This one's barely a day old." "Not a foal." Clara took his hand and pressed it against her belly. "Something else." Sam went very still. "Clara," he breathed. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying Hope might be getting a playmate, the humankind." For a moment Sam just stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then his face broke into the widest smile Clara had ever seen, joy so pure and unguarded that it made her heart ache. "A baby," he said. "We're having a baby. We're having a baby." Sam swept her into his arms, careful of her condition, but unable to contain his excitement. He spun her around once, twice, then set her down and kissed her with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. "I love you," he said against her lips. "God, Clara, I love you so much." "I know," she smiled up at him. "I love you too." They stood together as the sun began to set. The foal wandering back toward the paddock, the mountains turning gold and purple in the fading light. Clara leaned into Sam's warmth, his arms wrapped securely around her, and thought about the strange journey that had brought her here. She'd set out for Silverton to marry a stranger. She'd ended up somewhere far better. "What are you thinking?" Sam asked. "I'm thinking about that stagecoach, about being left behind with a broken leg, convinced I was going to die. And now—" Clara turned in his arms to face him. "Now I'm thinking that sometimes the worst moments of our lives lead us exactly where we're supposed to be." "Is that so?" "It is." She reached up to touch his face, this man who had carried her across the plains, who had fought for her, protected her, loved her, when she had nothing left to give. "You found me at my lowest point, Sam, broken and abandoned and terrified. And you didn't see a burden. You saw someone worth saving." "You are worth saving," Sam said. "You always were. So are you." Clara kissed him softly. "So are you." Behind them, the cabin waited, warm and welcoming, filled with books and memories, and the promise of more to come. Beyond it, the mountains rose toward a sky painted with the colors of sunset. And stretching out before them, golden and endless, lay the future they would build together. A future born from tragedy, but forged in love. A future neither of them had dared to dream of. A future that was finally and completely theirs. Clara Garrett had once been a woman with nothing, no home, no hope, no reason to believe that life could be anything other than survival. But standing there in her husband's arms, with new life growing inside her, and a world of possibilities ahead, she understood something that all the years of fear and running had never taught her. The deepest wounds can become the greatest gifts. The hardest roads can lead to the most beautiful destinations. And love, real love, the kind that fights and protects and never gives up, is always worth the journey. The woman who had been left behind had finally found her way home, and she was never going to let go.